to our tutorial today on how to customize forms using Sage BusinessWorks. Our course today will go over the custom form design screen and how to edit the forms. In this course, we will discuss the different form sections available, the different right-click options available, and then we will provide a live demonstration in which we will cover how to add items to an existing form and how to create a new form. First, let's take a look at the form sections. Almost all forms will have a header, detail, and footer section. The header will appear at the top of every page. Generally, these are for company name and address, customer or vendor name and address, and the detail column headings. The detail section will contain the main body of the form. These include database fields like quantity ordered and line item descriptions. The footer will appear at the bottom of each page. Usually the footer section will contain the page numbers, footnotes, and page totals. Another commonly used section is the group section. This is used to group the same type of information, such as all the line items for a single invoice, or all invoices for a single customer. Groups also allow you to enter fields such as subtotals. For example, you can create a group to display all invoices for a customer with the subtotal of the invoices in the group. Here is an example of what the form design screen looks like with the different default sections. If we select the report menu option, then select grouping, it will allow us to select a field on our form that we will want to group on. In this case, we will select to group on invoice number, as seen here. This means that each time the invoice number changes, we want to print the invoice and start a new invoice. We also have the ability to have it start a new page when the invoice number changes. That would be this option here. You can also select to reprint the group headings on subsequent pages, and that would be this option here. If our invoice uses multiple pages, we will want to print our heading on each of those pages. The group will add new sections for the group header here and the group footer here. After adding the group, the design screen changes to display the group heading and the group footer section. In the group footer, we could count the total number of items shipped on the invoice or the total of the line item dollar amounts to get an invoice subtotal. When you're editing this form, it's the information you're adding to is what goes above the gray line. So if you wanted to add something to the group footer, you would be putting it in the blank space here in between the group footer and the detail. And we'll go into more about this when we go into the live tutorial section. Some additional sections that are on the form are the title and summary sections. The information in the title section will print on the first page only. You could also add a summary section. This information will print on the last page only. This would be where we would place grand totals for the form. And this is an example of the design screen and all those section bands added. So you'll see here you have the summary, the footer, the group footer, the detail, the group header, the header, and the title section. To display an example of where the information will print, we added a label to each section of the form. The label describes where it will print, and if we select the preview tab, we can see where it displays on the form. So as you see here, the title will be on the top of the first page only. The header will print on the top of every page. The group header is only going to print when the group changes, i.e. a new invoice. The detail is going to be the body of the form. The group footer is going to be when the group changes, so to another invoice number. The footer is going to print at the bottom of every page, and the summary will print on the last page only. Each section or band in the form can have a static height or dynamic height. A section with a static height, like the header or the footer section, the amount of space on the form each time. It is considered a fixed or static height. For example, if you have an 11-inch page for the form, and the header takes up 2 inches, and the footer takes up 4 inches, then there will be 5 inches for the detail section. And that's the remaining space on the 11-inch form. The highlighted sections using the static height will use up the same amount of space each time the form is printed. Dynamic height is generally the detail band, and its size changes or fluctuates according to the amount of detail and what space is available on our page. In our previous example, if we have an 11-inch paper size and the header and footer take up 6 inches, then that would leave 5 inches for the detail section. If there is more detail than will fit in the 5 inches, the 5 inches of detail information will print, then the page eject, and the remaining detail will print on subsequent pages. If the detail only takes 3 inches, then the last 2 inches of the detail section will be blank, and the dynamic height will fluctuate based upon the amount of detail and the paper size. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the right-click options that are available to us. Each section also has a right-click option. If you point to the header bar and right-click the mouse, the right-click option will display. This is how you can tell if the section has a static or a dynamic height. You can also select whether this section prints on the first page or the last page, and deselecting visible will make the whole section invisible when printing. Each field in a section also has a right-click option. Select a field on the form that you want to right-click. You can also make the field invisible to the printing by toggling the visible option. Use the transparent option to make the background of that field transparent, and this is normally used to put text over a graphic like a watermark or a logo section. Right-click on the field in the detail section, and these are the typical DB text fields, which will pull information from the database. When you right-click on a database field, you will see yet more options. Here we can tell it to print a blank if the field is 0 instead of printing a 0. You can also select to suppress repeated values if the same data appears more than once. And of course, you can toggle the field to be invisible when printing, changing how the field is displayed. You can select the display format to change how the field is displayed. There are several options of whether it is a phone number, a zip code, or a date and time. The display format for a phone number will automatically put the parentheses around the area code and a dash between the prefix and the rest of the number. Like with the social security number, it will automatically put the dashes in place. And then if you want the date, it will format the date. And these are just some examples of how you can change the display format. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our live demonstration. To create a new form, we're going to go up to Utilities and Maintain Forms. You will see a listing of all form types available. So we're going to go ahead and hit New. And then we're going to give the form a name. So we're just going to call this one New Invoice. What is also important is to make sure that you select the correct form type for the type of form that you're trying to create. For example, if you're trying to create an order entry invoice, you need to select the OE invoice. If you select the AR invoice option, it will not create a form that will be usable in order entry. So we're going to choose the OE invoice, and then we're going to hit OK. And this is going to give us our blank form. As you can see here right now, we just have the header, the detail, and the footer sections. So let's go ahead and add a group header and a group footer section, as we mentioned earlier in the tutorial. To do that, we're going to go up to Report. We're going to go to Groups. You see here right now we have a blank option. So we're going to go ahead and click Add. And then where it says Break On, so we're going to select the information that we're going to break the group on. So in this instance, we are going to choose the invoice number. We don't want to start a new page with it, but if you did, you could choose it to start on a new page. And you could choose to reprint the headers on the pages if you want the group header and footer on each page. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. And you'll notice now we have a header, a group header that's breaking on the invoice number, the detail, the group footer, and the footer. So as you notice, when you slide your mouse over the gray area, it's going to turn into an arrow, and that means that this information can be moved or stretched out. So if we wanted to make the header a little bit larger, we could go ahead and do that. If we wanted the group header to be a little bit larger, we could do that as well. Then we have the detail section, and then we want to expand out the group footer a little bit. So now you can see the break for each section on the report. So let's go ahead and start with a few of the most commonly used items to be adding to a form. So let's go ahead and create a label. So the way that items are broken up on the screen is we have non-database relatable fields here and database relatable fields here. The items on this left side are just going to be items like that you can type the text into or pull a system variable or add an image. They're going to be items that aren't going to be pulling data from the database. The items on this side are going to be pulling information from your database itself. So let's start with adding a label onto the form. We're going to click over here wherever we'd like that label to be, and you notice it populates with the text label 1. We're going to come up here into the left-hand corner where it says Label 1, and this is where we can type the text that we would like to add to the form. So in this instance, we're going to type the word invoice. Now, that information is a little bit small, maybe a little bit, you want to make it a little bit more noticeable to the customer. So what you can do is you can change the font size, and you can scroll through the list and select the desired font. And then you can choose the size to go along with it, and let's make it a little bit bigger here. You can also do things such as bold it, italicize it, underline it. You can change the relative position to the size box that you have created. So if you want the information centered, let's say you had a larger box here, you could center that information within the box or align it to the right. You can also change the font color to be your desired color. And now we've added a label to the form. Okay, let's go ahead and add a memo field to the form. And we're going to add a memo basically to come in here and to show what, maybe add a little note saying all payments are due within 30 days. We're going to kind of center this into the middle of the page. And then we're going to go ahead and right click on the item, and we're going to go to the option that says lines. And this brings up a little notepad like editor where you could say something like all payments due within 30 days. Thank you, and we appreciate your business. And then hit OK. And what this will do is it will go ahead and put that text on the form itself. And right now we have it left justifying, so if you wanted to center it, you could center that as well. And then again, if you needed to make this box a little bit wider, it's all about clicking and dragging the item to make it wider. So once you have that in the desired location in the form, if you wanted to do something like shrink it a little bit shorter so it's just the size of the text you put in there, you can do that, and then you can move that footer on up to the bottom so that there won't be any excess information printing on the page. Another common thing that's added to the forms is something that's called a DB memo field. And a DB memo field works a little bit similar to the memo field in the fact that it's for a larger block of information. A DB text is just for a few words that will be added to the form. A DB memo would be something like an address block, which is what we're going to add here to the top of the invoice form. So we're going to click over here on the left hand side, and we're just going to click our mouse where we'd like our memo field to be. And then you'll see here it doesn't automatically put something in the box. So what we have to do is come up here to the data field option, drop that option down, and then you'll see here on the left hand side it will show item followed by a colon. What's on the left hand side of the colon is what table it's coming from. So since we want to put our company address on here, we're going to select the company address block. And what that's going to do is it's going to put in the address lines 1 and 2, city, state, and zip. Now you'll see here is it came in with the same formatting as the footer that we added, because when you add a new item it's going to retain the formatting of the previously added item. So since we don't want this bolded, we're going to change this back to Arial, and since we don't want it centered, we're going to align it to the left so that it left justifies. We don't need that big of a field here, so we're going to go ahead and shrink that field up. And then we're going to go ahead and take a look at what else we can do to our invoice form. Something that's often added to an invoice form are shapes. We have these shapes that are available to you. You'll click the shape option, and then you'll click where on the form you'd like to add your shape. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put a little box around the address just to make it pop out a little bit, make it a little bit more noticeable. So what we'll go ahead and do is select the box, the little circle on the outside of the box, till we put a complete circle around the item that we want to put the box around. When we deselect the mouse, you'll notice the box has now covered up the text. So that's where these buttons over here come into play. These are the send to back, send backwards, bring to front, and bring forward option. So since we want to send this box behind the text that we have, we're going to click the send to back option, and you'll notice now our text has come up to the front. So let's go ahead and preview what we've got so far going on our invoice form. You'll see we have our address with a box around it, an invoice over here in red, and we have our note at the bottom of the form. It's looking pretty good, but we can go ahead and add a little bit more. Something else we can add is an image. So the image file here on the left is going to allow you to go and select an image from a location on your hard drive. So we'll click the image button, then we'll come over here and click where we'd like that image to be placed. And then you'll notice we can right click on that image and select the option for picture. This is going to allow us to go and search the hard drive for what picture we would like to see added to our forms. So in this one, let's say our logo is a 3-tiered pyramid. So we're going to add that to the form, and then if for some reason the picture didn't fit appropriately in your box, you could click and select the stretch option, and that will fit it to the box so that the image would fit inside the box that you've added. Alright, and let's take a look at what that would look like. We've now got our little logo, the word invoice, and our date. Now it's time to add some detail. So since we're not going to be running a group header on this report, we're going to go ahead and shrink that section up, and then we're going to go ahead and add the detail to the form. So typically when you're adding detail, you're going to be pulling from a DB text field. So let's say, for instance, we wanted to add the line item to the form. So we're going to click and we're going to add our DB text field where we'd like it to be. We're going to come up here to the top. We're going to do the drop down option again. And then we're going to look for the line item description. So we've got the description line 1. And so then we've got that on the form. And since we know our descriptions can run a little bit longer, we're going to make that box just a little bit bigger so it's going to be filled up in that information. And of course, you also, when you're creating an invoice, you want to have items on the report like, say, like the quantity. So we're going to go to the line item quantity, which is the required field. And then we're going to go ahead and also add the price. Now, another common thing that customers like to add to their form is a barcode. They say they use a third-party software for scanning barcodes, and they'd like to create a barcode with their part number. So to do that, we're going to select this DB barcode option, and then we're going to click in our blank area. And notice now it's kind of cut off in our details section and moving on to the next section. So we want to make sure that we expand our details section so that it does include all the information we've added to our form. We then want to go ahead and right click on that barcode and go to Configure to verify we have the correct barcoding type for the scanning software that we're going to use. And then we're going to come up here to the top just like we have with any other DB field, and we're going to select what we want to encode with that barcode. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the line item, and then we're going to find the line item number. And that's going to put the part number on to be able to scan. So we're going to just go ahead and move that over here to the right hand side. And now that we've added the barcode section, we'll go ahead and scoot that back up so there's no excess space in the detail. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at what we can add into the group footer. So it tends to be things that you can add into the group footer would be like a summary section or a count of items, something along those lines. So that's when you're going to be adding what's called a DB calculation field. So we're going to click on the DB calc, and then we're going to come over into an open space, and we're going to click the mouse, and then you'll notice it's going to be putting in by default it's a sum of an item. If you want to change the type of calculation that's being performed, you would right click on that, and then you can change it to be a minimum, a max, an average, or a count. So we'll leave it as sum, because what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the sum of the quantities ordered. So we're going to come down here, and again we're going to go to the line items, and we are going to go to the required number of line items. And what we're going to do there is we are going to show a sum on the required line items. Another item that can be added to the footer or the group footer would be a date and time stamp. And this is going to be what's called a system variable. We're going to click on the system variable option, and we're going to click on where in the form we would like to add that. And you'll notice by default it's going to put a date stamp. So we also want to add the time, so what we're going to do is come up here to the top again, and where it says variable type, we're going to drop that down and choose date time. Now you can also add things like the date, the time, the pages, number of pages, and then if you want each one page numbered, you could add that as well. So we've got our date and time stamp, we've got our information on here. Let's go ahead and preview that. And you can see now what your invoice form is going to look like. Let's say you wanted a little bit more space between the header information and the details section. You can just come up here to the top and you can shrink that line down a little bit. And you will notice that when we move that down, it didn't change. That's because right now we have the upper portion of the form set to a dynamic height. Again, we talked about this earlier in the tutorial. The difference between a dynamic and a static is that a dynamic height will change anytime there's more information in a section, where a static height will make it always the same. So we're going to go ahead and select the static height option, and then we're going to preview our invoice. And now you'll notice it's put in that little extra space that we were looking for. One more thing that's commonly added to the form is a line. So we're going to click on the line, and we're going to kind of give us a line to separate the header information and the detail. So we're going to click on where we'd like that line to start, and you'll notice the line will be placed on the form. We then can click and drag the line out as far as we would like to add that. And you'll notice now we've got a line separating our header and our detail. So now that we've finished editing our new form, we're going to go ahead and save that form by going up to Form and Save. Now the next part that's critical is once you've created your new form, you need to make sure that you select that form when you go to print. So the next time you go to print an invoice under OE Invoices, Print and Post Invoices, you'll notice it's going to default to your form that you last used when printing. Go ahead and choose Select Form, and then you'll notice you'll see your new form that you've selected. So go ahead and hit New Form, and then you're ready to go ahead and print that new form. Let's take a look now at how to edit an existing form. We're going to go up to Utilities and Maintain Forms. We're going to select an existing form, so in this one we're just going to use the order entry invoice, and we'll just do the plain paper standard white. And we're going to click the Edit option. You see here now it's got the default invoice field. We've also covered a lot of the customization of the forms in the how to make a new form option. So if you want to see some further information on how to add items to the form, go ahead and review the part of this tutorial regarding a new form. So on this one, the first thing we're going to look at is some of the right-click options that are available to an item. Let's say you like this invoice form, but you really don't want the company name and address on the form. Because you already pre-printed on the form and you just don't want that to select. So what you can do is you can select the item that you don't want to display, you right-click on that item, and you can deselect the visible option. The same with the address. What this will do is it will allow you to keep the item here on the form in case you ever want to go back and use it again, but for now you can turn it off, and you'll notice when you preview it, the name and address will no longer print. Another item that can be done with the right-click option is you can set the position of the text. If you want it to be at a certain location so that you're consistent all the way across the board, you can change that position to your desired location, and then you hit OK, and it will shift the item in. So if you want to make sure that everything's in the exact same location, you can make that change there as well. Another item that you can do is the transparent item, and that works well if you're trying to put like a backwash logo on your form. So you can choose that option as well. Another one that comes in handy is the suppressed repeated values. This works well in the detail section if you have an item that may show up multiple times in the detail. You can suppress the repeated values so it only shows the item one time. Now let's go ahead and do some things that you might want to add to the form. Something that's very common is to add a telephone number to the form. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go up to the DB text field. Since the telephone number is just one line of text, it works the best. We're going to click on that, and then we're going to click to where we want the telephone number on the form. Again, we're going to come up here to the top where it shows data field. We're going to drop that down, and we're going to choose the company phone number. And you notice here it cut off the phone number, so we want to make sure that we stretch the field so that the entire phone number will fit in the space. And then we can preview that and notice that the phone number is on the form. And there are some other things that you may want to do when you're adding information. Let's say you add this to the form and it's just not quite lining up the way you'd like to. You can also come up under here under the view options, choose the toolbar, and there you'll notice that there are a number of toolbar options. Some commonly used toolbar options are the Align and Space toolbar. You'll see here what this will do is it will give you the ability to line text up to the left, to the middle, to the right. It will align it to the top, center, or bottom. You can also set it to space horizontally and vertically, and you can also select to have it center horizontal or vertically. So let's say we want to make sure our phone number is in line with our company, or actually our bill to, since our company name's not displaying. We're going to select the bill to, and then we're going to select the telephone number using the shift key to select both items. Then what we're going to do is we're going to click Align Left, and then you'll notice how the telephone number just shifted over enough so it's in alignment with the bill to. Now, if you're editing information, such as let's say you have your fields here for the detail section, where you have a required quantity, shipped quantity, and back ordered. Let's say you were adding these to the forms and they were all just off a little bit. If you wanted all the items to align to the top with the item that is in place that you liked, which is the required, you're going to do the same thing where you click on the first item you'd want to select, hold down the shift key on your keyboard, and then select the other two items that you would like to select. You notice it puts a little gray dots around each one. That means that they're all selected. And then we're going to click the Align Top option. That's going to jump everything back in place and align them all together along the top of the form. And that can also be done with the bottom, just as the others can be done with the left and the right. So those are very commonly used sections, items to add to an existing form. Some other toolbars that are available to you are the nudge toolbar. This comes in handy if you're really trying to get some particular things to line up on a form, and let's say you were using a form that had some information pre-printed on it, like you had the company name and address, and you wanted the telephone number to just go below that. And let's say where it's at right now isn't really in the exact right place. You can use the nudge down or nudge up button to just slightly move the item down on the form. So you see here, every nudge just slightly moves that item. So that toolbar comes in handy when trying to get things lined up with an existing bar. Now, if you do come in and you have not, there are times that you might not see this formatting toolbar available. You can select the View Toolbars and select Format. That's going to give you the ability to choose your font type, your font size, the color of the font, and then it's going to have those options for sending items to the front and the back. Now these toolbars can be moved around and adjusted so that they are easier for you to see. So if you have a limited space due to font size, you can adjust things so that they do not take up multiple lines on your form. Now if you want to, as you see here, this header has quite a bit of information, and this is always a good spot to go in and check to make sure you've either got a dynamic or a static height set on your form. So we've got it now where it's set to static, so no matter what is printed, that form will be, the header information will be at that spot on the form. Something else to also be sure of when you're editing forms is if you come into the preview section, if you ever see this arrow light up, that indicates that your text has now moved on to more than one page, and you've probably got a little bit too much extra space on your forms, or there's just too much data to fit on one page. So if you do notice that, something that can happen is, let's say you've got a little bit extra space on your header, you'll see that the blue items have been selected up. So at that point, that's when we want to come in here and work on getting this information to be nudged up against the last line of text. So we're going to just click on the gray bar, and we're going to make sure that it's sitting right at the very bottom of the text on the form. That's going to ensure that the form stays onto one page and won't cause any problems when printing. Now, when you're working with editing a pre-existing form, something you do have to be aware of is that you cannot save an existing form on top of itself. So if you do make changes to the form and you want to retain those changes, you would need to go to Form and Save As and give this form a new name. So this could be called Edited Invoice, and then you'll hit OK. Now that has not overwritten our standard form but it's giving you your own form to be able to process and use. Again, you want to make sure that after you've edited and saved your form, that you go through the next time you go to print the form and be sure to select that new form. So we're going to go in here to post and print our invoice, and then we're going to go to selected form, and you would choose your edited invoice form when you went to print. Now this setting will be retained when you print that once directly to the printer, and then it will be available to you in the future as well. I want to thank you for taking the time to view our tutorial today. If you need further information regarding this topic, please visit our knowledge base at support.na.sage.com. Thank you.